Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Ball Over Passion. Tough one, guys. Tough pill to swallow. It's been a tough last couple weeks, just with the Arsenal and, how things are going. Tides seem to have been turned from going to top four favorites. We've gone down to out of Europe potentially. So crazy, crazy swings of
Oh,
emotion. I don't think that there's a more bipolar fan base than the Arsenal fan base. Um, but look, guys, we're here because I think there's been some very valid concerns. We kind of talked a little bit about it in the Crystal Palace review, in terms of what Mikel has to do in order to kind of change our tides a little bit. And I don't think we saw that until the second half of this game. And I think you can separate criticizing Mikel and basically us no longer having a right to top four and whatnot. I think those are very hyperbole statements. So we're here to break into it. We probably won't be here for too long, but I think this was an interesting game, guys. Brighton definitely changed their off the ball structure for Arsenal specifically. And, we did touch on us being coached last game, but I think it was really clear in this game that, Graham Potter kind of built on what Vieira was doing in a little bit more concerted effort to really kill that center progression. But before we get into it, I'll ask the boys how they're doing. Curran, mate, how are you?
I'm all right, man. I think there's a lot of emotions, a lot of high emotions, a lot of people on both sides losing their shit a bit. I mean, let's put it bluntly. I think the main thing with this game is stubbornness. I think that's the theme of today. I'm pretty sure. I think stubborn and an inability to make changes. And we were talking off stream, George, about how you were mentioning about how he's just not making changes quick enough, and he's just not at the moment. And it's a very good point. And I think we're going to get into why he's doing what he's doing. What can we do to change what he's doing, and how we can move forward and start winning some games again. So I think it's you just got to be one of those to put it in the back mirror and move on and get on with the process of winning games again. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, so a big thing that I've really said, and I've really gone on record pushing that, in my opinion, Mikel is a lot more Wenger than he is Pep. And one of the biggest traits that I see in Mikel is when he's on a winning run, he refuses to change it. When Wenger was on a winning run, he refused to change it. And when there are injuries, Mikel is extremely slow to replicate those patterns of play. And if he can see that we're not able to kind of do the same thing, he's hesitant to change the system in order to accommodate those injuries. So we see it here with what's happened with Thomas Partey and Kieran Tierney. Evidently, we needed to go to a pivot. He refused again. You kind of see the starting lineup. Were you worried when you kind of had the team news come out, or did you feel as though no Nuno was the right way to go?
No, I wanted Nuno in just to keep as many things normal as possible, because losing your best left back and best midfielder at the same time, you want to keep everything as normal as possible. So I wanted Nuno to be in the left back and then Xhaka to be in the midfield. I also said on the Palace review, he has to stop hitting Tavares' confidence. Like, he keeps making it worse and worse. And him not starting him when Tierney's out made it even worse than what he did by taking him off at halftime. I would have started Nuno, and then I wouldn't have played a three in midfield. I would have played a pivot, because as soon as I saw the lineup, they purposely said Xhaka's at left back. But then I knew, it's going to be Tavares and Lokonga, Smith Rowe and Odegaard, and then I was worried because that midfield has never worked.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in addition to the changes that need to be done, what I found really concerning was, look, we know with Brighton you're dealing with kind of a back three team, and they kind of set up a little bit differently off the ball in the structure. But when you're dealing with a back three team, we had the template. We've done extremely well against back three teams all season, and it wasn't linked back actually to what we were doing with our own system. We went 2-4-4 in that time period where we were doing very, very well with it. We went with a more traditional pivot. You think back to Aston Villa, Spurs, in the earlier parts of the season, we did very well with an older system with a pivot as opposed to the lone pivot. And why is that? So I think I'm going to put up some screenshots about what Brighton's off the ball structure so that we can kind of understand. And it's a couple of these screenshots, a big thanks to, at @M_Taylor, Matt Taylor, who's a really good friend of ours, and mine, who does great work at Top Bins Talk, had some excellent screenshots about kind of the off the ball structure with Brighton. But so we're just going to show them. So if you do need to get him, we'll put him in the description as well. But check out Matt Taylor and Top Bins Talk. But overall, so guys, this is what we're looking at, right? We're looking at a 3-5-2, really simple, but they're very narrow. They added an extra midfielder kind of in the middle of the park. They let Basuma go lone pivot to just stick on Lacazette, who they knew wasn't going to have any athleticism to get away from him. That was the first mistake. And every time that we faced Brighton, Emile has destroyed Basuma. Why we didn't go with maybe my suggested Emile Smith-Rowe false 9 approach that we talked about in Crystal Palace, I'm not too sure. But immediately you can see this right now. We are outnumbered in the middle of the park. So what you can see really clearly is Sambi is outnumbered with between Welbeck and McAllister. When you actually go into the midfield, it's even worse. And so when you see that Martinelli and Saka are wide, what we're seeing in the middle of the park is this 5 versus 3, where they had Caicedo, Basuma, and Wetboot kind of in the middle of the park there, and they're essentially outnumbering Lacazette, Odegaard, and Smith-Rowe. And what this does is it makes our build-up impossible through the center, and it forces us wide. We get that real U-shape. And kind of just to show this a little bit better, when we look at some of the names here, in case you guys don't understand, as I'm talking a little bit fast here, when Ben White has the ball, which, by the way, he was kind of a pressing trigger in this game, they kind of trusted that Gabriel wouldn't be able to progress through his side. But when Ben was on, constantly McAllister pressed, Trossard was in the middle, and Caicedo was constantly on Odegaard, who was winning that interior battle. And right away, you see this outnumbering kind of in the middle of the park, which for me is extremely frustrating because it talks really about our pivot play. Ultimately, when you do struggle to build in this way, we need to add somebody else in there. So this simple 2-3, it can change to a 2-4 very easily, and then automatically you end up adding a body in the middle of the park, right? So for me, this was the story of the first half, and why it was really frustrating for me to see personally, because I was a big fan at Crystal Palace of saying, listen, we're going to meet Brighton, who are going to play a similarly high block. They're going to have a mid block, but we need to add somebody in the middle of the park in order to give us an option to build up. Because right now, the spaces that we're seeing right now for Sambi Lokonga, who's in the middle between Welbeck and McAllister there, are far too big. Odegaard was not winning his battle with Caicedo, and you don't want him winning the battle there with Caicedo. By dropping, Granit Xhaka a little bit deeper, kind of adding him to play in here, what you're going to be doing is forcing Welbeck to follow one of the pivot players, and automatically you have an extra player. That is the issue with kind of this off the ball structure. But I kind of wanted to go to you guys, get your say on this. So I'll go to Chris first. What do you make of kind of this off the ball structure and the problems that Mikel had in terms of not responding to Brighton adding a player in the middle of the park, kind of doing well to keep the pitch wide, right? Like what he really did was he cut off all in the center, and he basically asked our wide players and our wide buildup to kill them. To an unsuccessful nature. But what did you make of this?
Well, with Lacazette, obviously, he was probably the central player of the most space. And because he was unable to evade Bissouma, which was their plan, they really aimed for him to have the most space but not be able to use it well. It ruined our central progression. It meant that everything had to go out wide. And then, obviously, White would get pressed, but Gabriel would be left with space. And with the markers so tight, he was unable to find passes or find good movement. So as the game went on, in the first half more so than the second half, but as the game went on in the first half, we were unable to really bypass any of their pressing. They kept winning the ball back, or we go long and it just wouldn't be effective. And obviously, in this clip, you see Smith-Rowe inside, but at times, there were times where Smith-Rowe would be touchline and Martinelli would be inside, which kind of annoyed me because he wouldn't be able to find the space either. I think to avoid this, White should have used the ball to Martinelli a lot more, just to avoid all of this pressure and just go into the final third immediately. But we didn't do that at all. So with this diamond in midfield, we just couldn't. And I would have went for a pivot if it was me. I would have went for a pivot so we wouldn't be outnumbered. But Potter counted on us to do this, and it worked well.
Well, part of the problem, mate, is I mean, if you were to switch, their center backs were extremely wide, right? Like there is space really in between the third center back and that three and Lewis Dunk, who is kind of their central anchor, right? So if they were to really quick switch to Martinelli, which is on, it's a difficult pass. I can understand. Part of my issue, and I'll go to Curran next, mate. Like where we have Sambi Lokonga, you could push Odegaard in between the space where Basuma and Casado are. And you could have Lokonga where Odegaard is and have Xhaka in the middle. That's what a pivot gives you. That's the extra man in that 2-4-4. And what it would have done is put people between the lines that we could have basically overloaded one side on the ball. And so this, for me, it made it really clear that we lack numbers in both phases. When you look at the Welbeck and McAllister right there, there's a period there that we're outnumbered. It's 4v4. If you add another player there, you have 5 versus 4. It's really simple maths. And this is why I got so frustrated that we didn't do a pivot. I'll go to you, like, mate, what do you think the issue is? Not even just in this structure, but why we're not going to a pivot sooner, especially when you don't have somebody that can dribble you out of trouble in the same degree that, Thomas Partey can.
The issue is quite clear. We're not putting players in the best position they can succeed in. It's quite obvious. I think if you're putting Sambi Lokonga in that situation where he's got 2 men behind him trying to cut off the pass to him, he's never been the most first touch and run into space with extreme aplomb kind of guy. It's not that. It's not his role. His role is, and where he succeeded is getting the ball and progressing it, being able to be a bit more freer with his role, being able to run into space. If you puts this much pressure on someone that young, not even young, just someone of that hasn't developed to the degree Thomas Partey has, and that's not even a slight on Sambi, because Thomas is probably one of, not our best player at this moment in time, if he wasn't injured, of course. Look, if the issue with what I have with this situation is that one, I think CK mentioned it pretty well, we're not having that ability to switch on to Martinelli or switch on to Saka from White. And the second issue is that when we're not allowing probably our best passing progression machine in Granit Xhaka a central role. I mean, he's out wide and he's not able to pick out a ball that White maybe can't see at this moment in time. You need to be able to have, again, your best players in situations to succeed, and that's what we're not optimizing right now. And I mean, George, we'll just go to a couple of the comments. I'll quickly answer them, and then I'll give it to CK, and you can answer it as well. But for me, I think in terms of, I'm guessing this is a Gabriel. I mean, I don't think it's a case of he's incapable. We've seen plenty of times that he's had technical security to get the ball and make that first phase press breaking pass. The issue is that he can be overly. He tries to do too much at times, and I think that's a valid criticism. But
I think it's less about Gabriel, mate. But when you look at this, this is a system error. This is where I think that we get, as fans, a little bit too technical. Ben White is among one of the best ball progressors, kind of in the Premier League. Period. End of story. He's not getting it through here. I don't care how great you are. Thiago's not getting it through here. When you're man v man and there's no space in the center and you're forced wide from that area, it's a system error. That's what it is. It's very simple that we needed to add a player in the middle of the park to provide an option, so that when we did go 4v4, it was actually 5v4. So for me, it was less about just having one center back, for example, that couldn't progress, because you could do the same on the opposite side. Like, I'll bring it up just one more time and we can show the names. Even if it was on the left side with Gabriel, guys, the structure would be the same. This time, Welbeck would just shift over, McAllister would shift over, Gross would go, and Wepu would be on Smith Rowe. You're not solving an issue by having another person that is good on the ball in this structure. What you're lacking is options in midfield. If you have no overload there, you can't progress the ball. That's the basics of kind of anything. So when you do it, though, I want to go to Chris because I think this next screenshot shows where we could have taken advantage of some things, particularly with the space between the center backs and the back. So I'll just show up this next space where, look, Chris, we didn't switch effectively, but when Gabriel has the ball here, right, and you're looking at ways to exploit Brighton, it wouldn't be down the center. We said that they forced us wide, they forced us in this U shape, but even if he was able to switch to Martinelli, who's touchline in this scenario, like you asked for me, Chris, it's the lack of movement of Lacazette.
Yeah, that's what I thought with Lacazette. Obviously, I said in the first screenshot you showed that Brighton trusted themselves or trusted him not to be effective enough for them to leave him alone. Essentially, like even behind Bissouma in that screenshot, there was space. Obviously, you can't see it there, but there was space between the centre backs that they trust themselves enough to give him a lot of space that he won't punish them. So with this, he doesn't have enough pace or the awareness to abuse that space in behind. So it's basically ineffective. That space, us creating that space or them leaving that space, they can do it because they don't trust our striker to make effective use of his touches or make us good movement enough to do that. But like obviously he had the least touches in the game, so he was really not involved in the game at all. Like on and off the ball, he was a hindrance. That's the only word I can use. Like here, maybe he'd play it over the top. If it was, I'd say Aubameyang or Martinelli or Nketiah, he'd probably play a ball over the top, or he'd play it to Martinelli and let him go 1v1. But him going 1v1, he would have been 2v1 because the centre back can come and cover, and the midfielder would have come across. So yeah, like that space is ineffective because basically Brighton trust Lacazette not to hurt them.
Well, I think part of the issue, right, is just having a mover that is able to attack the space between the center backs there. It's really quite simple. And this is why I was calling really for, especially in this game, it was less for me about having the false nine, as some people were saying, but the biggest issue was having a striker that wasn't willing to run the channels in between the wide center back and Lewis Dunk. This was going to be a problem for us regardless of who we played. And it's why I had said I wanted Martinelli at first as a striker, because this for me was the key space. So even if we were to switch over to Martinelli in that sense, Smith Rowe is in a place where he should be. He's between the lines, ready to receive, right? But the issue is no one is being dragged out of position. So in that sense, that was Wepu, who's on Smith Rowe. If Lacazette makes a bending banana run, we call them kind of in coaching, right? He runs along the back line and, just attacks that space where that kind of yellow square is. What that does is it would cause doubt, from the wide center back that's going to meet Martinelli, but mainly Wepu, who will follow Lacazette. And what does that do? It leaves Emile Smith Rowe open. Boom. And things change, but the inability for Lacazette to move, period. And this idea that, Lacazette is, somebody that helps us in progression, that does a lot of hard graft and a lot of hard work for us off the ball. I'm not buying it. I mean, Chris, you had a really great, number visual earlier in the week with a tweet that just kind of showed how many touches Lacazette's had in his last 5 games. And I think you were saying the last time that Lacazette had a 40-touch game, which was typical averages for people like Man City and other great strikers like Kane.
Tony has that as well.
Tony was Wolves. Wolves was the last time that Lacazette had a 40-touch game, and he is a massive problem to our ability to progress.
Those cut you off, but those touches is that everybody else in the team gets 40. Ramsdale even had more touches than him in this game. So everybody else in the team, and Nketiah, who came off the bench, had 16 touches, so 6 less than Lacazette. And Pepe had 15, 7 less than Lacazette, and they played 20 minutes. So in this, going into the game, we did the preview. Obviously, you couldn't be there. We did the preview just before the game, and I was like, they're playing Joel Veltman right centre-back instead of Webster, and they're playing Cucurella left centre-back instead of, obviously, Dan Burn, who's not there anymore. So those spaces in between the centre backs will be very effective because Joe Veltman just can't cover the spaces. He's 34 now, and Cucurella has a tendency to attack. So they're playing players at right centre back and left centre back who can't cover the spaces well enough. And obviously Dunk, he's a good player, but no one in the world can cover that much space for 90 minutes. So those spaces will be in use at times. And I wanted Nketiah or Martinelli, anybody. I literally said anybody else apart from him to start the game, just because I knew those spaces would be very effective to use. And just because I know the 4 games before that, he touched the ball, like it took him 3 games to touch the ball less than 100 times. So he doesn't touch the ball. So this notion that he drops deep and really helps to progress the play is nonsense, because when the going gets tough in games, he goes to the touchline. He removes himself, he removes any responsibility.
Or he hides behind Basuma like he's doing here, and he doesn't make a run where he knows that he'll be marked. He's making a very casual run. And part of my issue, Chris, with this is there was a lot of debate in terms of having, look, we talked about it at the Crystal Palace, where you have to have Martinelli, Emile Smith-Rowe, Saka, and Odegaard as your front 4, right? And there's been debate. Do you use Emile Smith-Rowe in this quote-unquote false 9, which, by the way, I hate. That just means a player that drops now on Twitter is now a false 9, but whatever. Do you have him in that Laka role, or do you have a Martinelli at striker? And part of my issue is when you face a back 3 team, a 3-5-2, guys, there is no space in the center. Adding somebody in will not draw center backs out. They have an extra man there. So what you have to do is stretch the back 3. In a back 3 system, you constantly have to attack the space between your widest center back and the 3 and the central anchor. And who can do that more in a role sense? It's got to be your Martinelli type 9, your free mover 9.
Well, even if you do have this false 9 type, they have to be good enough that they warrant attention from the centre back.
Well, for example, Chris, let's put Lacazette ball side. For argument's sake, for people to understand, let's put him in front of Basuma. Would you not say, even if he was a reliable option and he was an Ivan Toney who could drop deep like that,
you take away space?
Okay, even if he did that, is he not marked right now?
He would be, and for me, him being in front of Bissouma just makes it easier for the centre back because we're using less space to create.
Exactly. And now this is my point, that every time I push back on Twitter when people are asking me, why can't we have a 9 that's reliable technically? It's not just that, guys, because when you look at this structure, they would have been ineffective. By the way, Tony would probably be a little bit more on the left, so he'd probably be up against Webu. Yeah, and maybe you would have Emile Smith-Rowe on Basuma. Maybe those two would be the 2 switches you'd have. Now, ultimately, I think they're better matchups. They probably have a better likelihood of spinning away, but the point is they're being marked. That's not where the space is. The space is not adding players where there's players already there. That is the issue I'm having. And so here, what you needed is guys running into that space. And if you don't have people running into that space, you don't pull people out of their structure. And that, guys, for me, is going to be the story of this game, where Mikel was too slow to react and too slow to even predict, because, guys, it was predictable. I hate to be one of those pseudo-intellectuals on Twitter, but it was very, very predictable that we needed to go to a pivot. And not only a pivot, but this is why against back 3 teams in specifically, you need to have a Martinelli-type striker to stretch the lines. You need to make runs between the 3rd center back and that central anchor. They're vital. And they pull people apart to open space in the middle of the park. That is what we need, period, end of story, against a back 3 team. Now, I think when you face Southampton, when we do the preview, we're not going to be facing this structure as much, so you can kind of get away with maybe doing a false 9 type if you wanted. But the biggest frustration I had was basically looking at this, being able to predict that Brighton would pack the middle, okay, and we kind of refused to make a very smart choice of adding somebody in the middle of the park to allow our striker to do that movement, to peel off their center backs, to attack in between Joel Veltman and, of course, Cucurella on the wide side. And you know what really is frustrating? I think when Saka got joy and we were 1v1, we did well. As usual, we do well when we give these players 1v1 chances. So I think we'll probably just go to one last aspect of this game, because we haven't really talked about some of the key issues, and we do have to get going a little early today. But one last thing, guys, and I'll go to Curran with this. Guys, Brighton had a set piece vulnerability. I know I wasn't able to make the kind of preview, but I would have been screaming about this in the preview because bar Lewis Dunk, they haven't been great at set pieces, and he's kind of their only aerial threat. And it was something that we kind of were able to really exploit a lot earlier in the match. And this is Saka who takes a shot back post, and Gabriel is really unlucky here not to score. And I think it changes the story of the game. I'll be honest with you, because we were playing very poorly in this first half. But set pieces was an area for us to really take advantage. And by the way, it wasn't just that, but later in the half we'll go to with the Odegaard chance. But we had so many set pieces, and for me, guys, beyond this set piece, we overthought them. This is the one time I'll criticize Nicholas Jover. How many times did we do these short corners, these short routines that weren't working? There was a couple times that Odegaard had a free kick in the same spot that he hit the crossbar with, but he would pass it to Martinelli and the chance would go. We were taking more short corners, and I didn't understand it because we had excellent ability 1v1 in these set pieces. What did you make of our set pieces this game, Kern?
I mean, I think it's emblematic about how Cedric took so many in terms of free kicks. I mean, I don't understand what the thinking was behind that. I think that weird free kick where we tried to that sort of like that short pass to try and find a shot. I don't know what that was about. It's disappointing because the fact is they lost Dan Burn. I think him and Dunk together is a great type of aerial threat to ward off corners and things like this. And losing someone of that height and physicality is obviously going to impact your ability to defend set pieces, corners, crosses, etc., etc. And I think this is a game where you really have to say, look, we overthought every single phase of this game. We tried going Xhaka left back. We tried going Sam B6. We tried Cedric on set pieces. We tried doing short corners. We tried doing short free kicks. We got, you know what I mean? Like everything we tried today was sort of like Mikel going, okay, how can I elevate this team without having the players that I want, and how can I kind of trick the opposition into trying to get my way through and get the 3 points. And the issue with me is this game did not need complicating. I think you mentioned earlier about the 2-4-4 build-up we used against three of the back teams, the Villas, etc., earlier in the season. It was very simple. I don't understand what the thought process was behind it. I hope that he's learned from this, and I hope that he will take this going forward and think, okay, we have Chelsea, we've got Spurs, both heavy three at the back teams in very important games. I think we have a couple more teams that play three at the back, and the issue for me is that if you actually just go and look in the history of our time under Mikel, you can look at, for example, Stamford Bridge last year, three at the back, we did very well. This season, the performances we've had against three at the back did very well. He knows how to beat three at the back teams. The issue I have is he's overthinking it. He's going over in his head and trying to manufacture results when all you have to do is revert to what you are good at, and that is understanding how to simply break down teams. And the main issue that I'm really getting a bit annoyed with is the issue is the ability to put away high XG chances. I don't think I'm done with big chances created. People saying it, because big chances created isn't the main reason why we lost this game. It's a subjective stat for one. The issue is we created over 2 XG this game, and we're not putting away the chances. So
well, I think fundamentally, mate, like what I have a big problem with is when you do actually look into this stuff, it's a system error. Like, I don't know why we can't
system error, overcomplication.
Like fundamentally, Mikel for the second game in a row has made a system change at halftime. That shows that you as a coach have made a mistake. So let's call a spade a spade. Like, the reasons that we've lost this game is because Mikel has gone with the wrong system. And you know, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're shit. That doesn't mean that you're horrible. He did this last season. He's learning quicker. He's making halftime subs. Last game, you know, last year we would have done this for the rest of the 90
70
minutes.
minutes.
And you know,
70,
we
80 minutes.
wouldn't have made a change
change, yeah.
until, you know, a following, you know, game. But guys, I think we do have to get really quickly into some of these flashpoints. So I'll just go over the goal really quickly, and I'll go to Chris, kind of how upset you were, because for me, this goal was emblematic of the issue that we had. And it was very simple. So I'll just run through it really quickly. You know, Lacazette is pressuring up top, and kind of what you were saying, Chris, at times, you know, Martinelli joined the two, which I don't have a problem with personally. That's fine. But when you fill in like this, we have numbers at this moment in time. And, you know, Wepu's going to go into the channel and he's going to gamble. You know, they were doing this long ball into the channel to try to get Granit Xhaka out because they knew he was left back, but quick balls over the top, and they would gamble. The issue I have is kind of our players in the middle of the park here. Sambi Lokonga, he's out. We know this. He can be drawn out, but he's out of position. Okay. And Emil and Odegaard now are running back. And when you have this scenario, this for me is unacceptable. Especially, I'll go really quickly back forward. When it happens, there's no reason to stop running. For me, if Odegaard and Bukayo, to be fair, are both diligent running back in this turnover, okay, we don't see this. This, for me, is unacceptable because, you know, Sambi was back there, but, you know, these boys, you know, they were higher up the pitch. They were just lazy to get back. They were hoping that Gabriel would kind of do his thing and stop Wepu, but now we're outnumbered. Now we're 5v4 when, in reality, Odegaard or Emil Smith-Rowe should be in the center of the pitch, and that would stop a Trossard follow-up. But again, we kind of have a breakdown here. It's 5v4, the cross, the cut back kind of to the center of the park, kind of what we would really love to do. And, you know, Trossard just buries the hatchet here. Chris, for you, mate, like, this really pissed me off because I'm seeing this is why Odegaard can't be an 8. Like, you know, for a lot of the people saying that, you know, he can be an 8 in a 3, we can't because of issues like this. But it's not just him. Sambi is outnumbered. Do you think this happens with Granit Xhaka in the pivot next to Sambi? I'm not too sure. But I'll go to you. Like, what did you make of the breakdown in this goal?
Well, firstly, we'd just naturally have a more trustworthy player in transition in Xhaka than Odegaard, and a player more inclined to be deep. Odegaard doesn't, as much as he drops deep to progress the ball, he doesn't want to be defending on the edge of the box all the time. But Xhaka is more like more normalized to be in there. So for me, I would have been with the pivot in this situation. And obviously, if you go back to the first screenshot, you just see immediately there's two. The very first one where Lacazette, there's two Brighton players closer to the left back position where the left back should be than any Arsenal player. Welbeck and Pascal Gross, I think that is. Mwepu and Gross are in the right wing spot where no left back is, and immediately that's a 2v1 versus Gabriel and whoever wants to cover won't be there because immediately they're already running towards the goal and everyone else is facing the ball apart from Mwepu. If you look, literally everybody on the pitch is facing the ball apart from him, and he's making the run towards the touchline. So for me, immediately from there, I knew something bad was going to happen. And obviously, in the box, we're outnumbered 3-2. White and Cedric versus their 3 attackers, and then White and Cedric do well to close off the 6-yard box. So if the ball went across the box, it wouldn't have gone in, but no one else is there to close down.
This is my frustrating thing, Chris. Like, when we go to this thing, look, Sambi's out of position. We can all understand that. We understand that he gets dragged, but actually he's the only one that does his due diligence. And I get onto him for his off the ball work, but, you know, look, he's out of position, but at least he's making an effort. For me, look, this kind of was really emblematic, of Smith-Rowe, who I think this isn't like him. I think he was unfit. It was kind of evidence in why he was taken off at 60 minutes. I don't think that was a tactical substitution. That was fitness for me. He didn't look fit kind of all game for me. But what was really frustrating is that is, you know, Granit Xhaka's unable to get back because he's, you know, too high up the pitch. But guys, in the first area, you know, Granit is way too high. I don't understand why he's with Veltman. That to me doesn't make sense.
Emil, if anybody should be there, Emil should. If he's
exactly that's what I was going to say. Like, this rotation is totally wrong. You know, if Granit Xhaka is where kind of Emil is, and we had Emil on Veltman, now we are unlikely to have stopped, you know, the long ball. That's not the point. But the point is, with having Xhaka back there, he would crash the middle of the box a lot more. Emil wouldn't. and he didn't. And, you know, this is one of the few times that I think Emil just, you know, didn't do his due diligence in running back. And again, I don't think he was fit. But you don't put somebody who's unfit in the middle of the park mainly. And that was the struggle that we kind of felt. And we made the distances big. We didn't keep them small. And I'll go to Curran for kind of this last bit. I don't want to spend too much time on the disallowed goal. Like, I'll show it because we have to. And we have to do our due diligence here. But, you know, look, guys, for me, when you look at it with VAR, it was too close. You probably, in my opinion, he was offside, but you couldn't prove it. And when you end up looking really close kind of here, it's just yeah, like they looked at it for 5 minutes. It's just absolutely impossible to tell. But Curran, like, I'll go to you. The issue I've got is, I swear in September they said that they would stop nitpicking.
Yeah,
they give the
whole point of the thicker lines. I didn't see a line. Did you guys see a line?
I saw a line in mine.
We put it right at the end and then took it off quickly.
Yeah,
I must have missed the line. But the thing is, for me, is it's annoying, and I think that, I mean, when we've seen this, we've seen so many times when decisions just don't go our way, and it is what it is. I think that it would have changed the whole game. I think that we're back on the front foot and going into that second half, but that just wasn't there for us today and that day. And I think the main issue was the amount of time. I think the main issue is that the whole point of VAR was to get rid of howlers, to get rid of referee errors, right? That was the whole point of it. The whole point was to give the referee power, but if something is horribly wrong, then correct it. This is basically like you've got
guessing. Like, let's call it what it is.
Different angles, and none of them are conclusive that it's like, you know, that it's 100% offside. I think probably it was offside. Yeah, there are the lines. I mean,
but the lines were guesses, right, guys? So I think for me, ultimately, there was no clear angle in terms of what they were doing. And when there is no clear angle and you are inconclusive, you don't overturn a decision. That was what the line was
the issue.
From VAR, right? Like, without a reasonable doubt or beyond a blatant error. That was the line that the Premier League's been doing. There is no blatant error here. It's not blatant that he's offside. So for me, they have to be consistent. But it's not the reason that we lost, you know, the game. And I think in general, we were just so poor.
We didn't deserve to win at all. That goal would have been a chance to win.
I think we were hard done by on the balance of play to not draw. We definitely deserved the draw, especially when you kind of – we'll go into the chances in the second half now because that was a little bit better. But, guys, shock horror, Mikel makes a system change. Granit Xhaka gets in the midfield, and we actually start the half kind of well, don't we? Like, you know, shock, you know, and it really just pissed me off. I'm not going to lie, as I was watching, and not to be vindicated as somebody that felt that we should have gone a pivot before, but just – I was like, okay, at least he's learning and he's changing at halftime. But, you know, for me, this was a chance really to right a wrong from Palace. Keep pace.
What annoyed me about it is that he made the same change for Palace, and then Brighton basically did the same thing as Palace to go man to man, and he still didn't. Like, it took him till halftime to finally change it. What annoyed me is that he should have started how he started the second half. Like, that's what everyone
from the beginning of the game, right?
Pivot. Everyone wanted a pivot. Even all the news wanted a pivot. So for me, when they want something, it's very late. So yeah, for me, it really should have been a pivot, and then for him to change it late on and then look so nervous at the end, like, oh, when are we gonna get this equalizer? Was so annoying to me because it shouldn't have been a 2-1 Brighton game.
No. Really, and I mean, look, guys, I don't want to go over old ground. We kind of, you know, look, we kind of talked why a pivot was needed kind of in the beginning of this little video here. And if you guys don't remember, go back, at the start, we talked about the off the ball structure and why a pivot is really needed. But look, the issue for me is he's keeping Lacazette on. I don't want to talk about it too much. I'll be honest with you guys, because I think we've been very clear on this channel from far beyond the last couple of weeks that we're not a fan of Lacazette for very good reason. And we push back on a lot of the narratives that, have been happening. But I want to give rare praise. So everyone in the comments, anybody that knows BoP, George doesn't do this, but Odegaard, guys, he looked up and he shot. It was beautiful. And guess what? The one time he does it, bang goal from probably the worst location you could ever do. But look, he strikes through. And you know what pisses me off is Martin Odegaard has this in his locker. And look, okay, yes, it's a deflection off Danny Welbeck. Yes, he gets lucky. But guys, it's a good strike. It's a clean strike. And it's one time that he's very vertical. He says, screw it, I'm going for goal. And this I want to encourage. Like for me, when I see Martin Odegaard do this, I love it. I want him to be more vertical. And when he does these things, good things happen. And I just wish that he would take some, not to do this every game. Like I don't need him taking 30-yard screamers every game. But look, he has to look up. And of course, he did miss a sitter like moments before this, right? Like it's becoming a theme where, when you're looking at finishing, Martin has to do better. He knows that. But I think he redeemed himself with a beautiful strike. I want to give him his due praise here. But also on the free kick, and I'll go to you, Curran, kind of on the free kick, which was really annoying. But, we had this free kick 3 times in the second half, guys. 3 times. And one of them was an annoying, quick, short ball from Martinelli, which is why I kind of had some criticism for Nicholas Jover earlier in the pod. But look, when we do this, Odegaard had 3 of these chances. It was the only time he went for goal. And, he hits the crossbar, the follow-up with Eddie. And I just thought, you know what? It's one of those nights. I mean, he does everything right. He makes solid connection. But, yeah, mate, like what did you make of kind of the last 10 minutes, so to speak? So, we pull one back and, we do put pressure on them. I mean, it's a little too late. I think everybody watching would share the frustration why we didn't do this a lot later. We had a good start to the half. We kind of filtered a little bit in the middle of the half when they added somebody in the middle of the park. Like Chris said, they went man to man. They kind of closed up the center even more than they already had, but we were still getting chances, right? Like, again, Odegaard missed a sitter before he scored the goal. Then this happened, when you're going in, I think the 94th minute, before the Mwepu chance, we have an opportunity to kind of either tie it or at least, take the lead, I would say, in several chances. But we just didn't do it. We didn't finish our dinner. And we have this here, which is a fun discussion point to end on. But the Mwepu goal, Curran made, like, there's numbers back here. This isn't horrible.
That's what annoyed me most, is that literally we have more than enough to defend this. And yes, it's a great strike, but like at the end of the day, you need to close that down. They just get passed around, and it's frustrating because I don't really blame Aaron for this. I think a lot of people went on Aaron for it, and it's been very much a case of, well, it's a great strike. I mean, you can't really say it, but the fact that we just let them pass around us was annoying. I think that it was frustrating, and I think that you summed it up very well in terms of the last 10 minutes with saying that it was so much pressure that we couldn't finish the chances and at least get a point from this. I as much as I would like to say we deserved a win or we should have got a draw, I mean, the XG obviously says what the XG says, but this is a standard game where you can say, look, XG be damned. This is, we performed poorly and we deserved what we got. I think a draw, I mean, we could have got a draw. I think that might have been fair, but this is so disappointing because defensively these kinds of things don't happen that often. And this is why I push back on all the Gabriel talk, and because it's very much a case of, look, our problems aren't defensively. There's not a defensive. We're not I think people have got a memory loss issue. I think we've forgotten that we've come from the days of Mustafi, Socrates, and old Koscielny to now. I think we've forgotten that. The issue right now is that we don't have basically someone who can cheat XG consistently. We don't have someone that, even forget cheating XG, just actually putting the ball in the back of the net at a consistent rate.
Well,
We just don't have.
maybe that should be like just a topic of conversation as we end it, because for me, I still push back on that current. Like, I understand that there's a gap in the squad for a really good ball striker. That I get. But this idea that we need to look to cheat XG isn't in the Spurs method of getting top four, I think is ridiculous. And when you look at it, fundamentally, if Mikel had started the game with a proper system with a pivot, and we could sustain pressure like the last 10 minutes, instead of 10 minutes for 60, for 70, we win this game comfortably. We're not sitting here talking about we didn't finish our dinner, because we've sustained pressure and we got to win. This is what we were doing so well in this last run.
First half of the season. Yeah.
And there was nobody that was sitting there saying that we weren't scoring goals. Now I'm seeing people saying, oh, maybe it was false to trust our youngsters. Guys, our youngsters have had their most productive season. It wasn't false. They have been doing their role. They have done their job. The issue has been, in the last 2 games, we haven't played a system that suits the players that we have right now. That's it. That's a spade. That's what a spade is. Okay. Mm-hmm. We don't have to talk about getting somebody that cheats XG. We don't have to talk about getting another Son and Kane experienced attacker. That's not it. We haven't sustained pressure the way that we know we have, and by the way we used to do, for the last 6 months of the season. And nobody was talking about our output and our ability to finish chances in those 6 months. Why? Because we sustained pressure for longer than 10 or 15 minutes. And that's been the fundamental truth of it. And despite having possession at around, I think, 60% for both of these games, it was poor possession. It was U-shaped possession. It was not possession that was hurting the opposition. We didn't sustain any kind of pressure in the final third. We weren't doing well on second balls at Palace, as well as second balls here. And for me, really quite simple. We need to do a little bit better, system-wise. Mikel has to stop being stubborn. It's very clear. Has to go back to a pivot. He has to stop trusting Lacazette. I don't care about the dressing room seniority. You need to make decisions for top four, and if you don't, it's going to cost you your objectives, and that's when I start to have an issue. And for me, I kind of wanted to ask you guys, I think we all know the solution, but I wanted to kind of end off, how do we stop the rut? Is it as simple as what we're maybe saying? Just go pivot, cut out Lacazette cancer, and boom, your team becomes unified again. Or is it a little bit more complicated with what Curran's saying, that maybe we do need somebody that cheats XG? I'll go to Chris first, and then Curran.
We've seen ourselves win a game by cheating XG versus Watford, and it comes about sometimes, but we don't need it to win games. I think Arteta just needs to stop being stubborn, or stop wasting time with Lacazette, and stop forcing the system around him, and just bench him and let the team be a lot more fluid and a lot more potent. And us obviously not creating more, us creating better chances and just giving more space for our players to, because obviously our decision making hasn't been the best recently. So give us more space as a team with Martinelli up top, I think, to make, if you do make a mistake in the final third, it won't be as costly because we'll have the ball more up there. Simply, for me, I don't think we need to cheat XG. I just think we need to keep the ball better in the final third. And obviously, we're going to make mistakes, and we're not going to be as potent as Harry Kane and Son, or Salah and Jota, or all these guys, because they're just better than what we have. So what you do need to do is sustain pressure in the final third and make the most of what you have, which is the ability to keep the ball in the final third. We can do it. So do it and then create shots, because we went on a complete run of like 5-6 games of 20 shots. So we can do it. And when you do get 20 shots, you're going to score more than one. And we did it versus Brentford, Wolves, all these teams. So for me, we don't need to cheat XG per se. We just need to bench Lacazette.
So it's just that simple. Yeah. Curran, mate, how about you tie it up in terms of what
you're talking about? And play Tavares.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing I was going to say. In terms of cheating XG, I think obviously the only reason why I think it's a method that is obviously, that's why I brought it up, is because of the competition right now. And I think when you talk about what we need to change how we dominate in possession, because as you mentioned, 60% possession, none of it useful. We're starting low, we're keeping the ball low. A lot of Ben White looking up, not finding a thing, scanning, looking up, trying to find a ball, not being able to find a ball. And that comes from not overloading in the correct areas, as we mentioned earlier. If you're going to talk about what we need to change, you need to trust the players that you've bought for this situation. We bought Nuno and Sambi in case for this very, very, very situation. They've been cooking all season for this situation, because this is what we had happen last year with David Luiz and Tierney going down. We brought in reinforcements because we saw injuries, especially at left back. And you have to restore Tavares' confidence, have him high, have him making out to in runs, put him in that inside channel in the 5. If you want to have Nelly out wide, fine. If you want ESR out wide, fine. The issue is get get Tavares in that inside left channel where he can actually be productive and where he's not as defensively reliable. If you want to go 2-4-4, he's done that very well as well. So have him on that. In that first bank of 4 on the left, he's done that quite well as well, I think, depending on the opposition. So my final words would be, let's just get our 3 points. I don't care how we do it, 3 points, and then we can move on to Chelsea, we can move on to Man United, get into the business end of the season. So 3 points is essential, and we'll get into that in Southampton.
Look, ultimately for me, guys, it's really simple. Revert to a pivot. Have your pseudo 10s between the lines so that you can support a striker that can have free movement like Martinelli. If you want to have Emile Smith-Rowe in the false 9 role, that's fine. You just have Martinelli touch line. That's okay. But ultimately, I don't like that, because then Nuno and Martinelli are both on the left wing. And for me, they have really poor technical security between the two. So let's keep it simple. Have our pseudo 10s between the lines, technical receivers, let a striker move freely. And what that does is it reduces the distances for both Sambi and Nuno, by the way. Because when you do add a Nuno kind of at the back there and you add a pivot, you reduce the distances that they have to cover. So even if you have balls over the top, you're less likely to have 5v4s that we saw earlier with Lokonga. You're going to have an extra body who's a runner. And by the way, I would have Nuno in the back there, who would have made a difference with the Mwepu running in the back there. That was another thing that I really pushed back on people. Put Granit in the middle, but guys, Mwepu running the channels, I would trust Nuno Tavares to deal with that a lot better in the wide channels than I would Lokonga. I would trust him a lot better than dragging out Gabriel. So, look, I hope Mikel does the narcissistic thing and watches BoP so that he can see the beautiful changes that he can do. But look, guys, we definitely have some content coming up. Guys, next week is a busy week too. We've got 3 games. We've got Saturday, and then after Southampton, I swear we have Chelsea and Man United in like back-to-back games.
Chelsea Tuesday, and then because remember, this was the whole thing: Chelsea Tuesday and United Saturday, and it was the whole reason why Mikel was going on about the scheduling, if you remember correctly.
So we've got time. This idea that top 4 is done is ludicrous.
Oh, sorry, Wednesday, Chelsea, yeah.
Yeah, like this idea that top 4 is done is ludicrous to me. What we have done is make it a competition. This is what annoys me, I think, with it. And there absolutely is not even just time, but there is going to be a lot more turns in the road. And in fact, in a week, I would think that the table looks very, very differently. But fundamentally, Mikel has to go back to basics. I think we know the solution. In the words of Nike and what Chris was saying earlier, kind of just do it. Like essentially just do the dang changes and let's see what they bring. So guys, thank you for sticking with us. I want you guys to make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. You let us know we can improve. We appreciate all of your support. Thank you to everybody that's been commenting as well. Thank you so much. And we will definitely be back with another video to preview the games that are coming up, because guys, there's a couple. So there's a lot of content for you guys to come up. Also keep in mind, we're probably going to be releasing some new member content very soon, in terms of some vlogs for you and some other content that Kern's been working on from historical teams. So keep an eye out on that. We're definitely going to be keeping you guys busy and keeping up on our word to try to produce exciting content for you guys that you enjoy. So guys, bear with us. Keep the faith. Everything isn't doom and gloom. If there are solutions, but let's just hope that the team can pull it together, and we will definitely be back with you guys for the Southampton preview. So thanks everybody, and we'll catch you then. Bye now.